The squeegee is an important tool in screen printing, and using the proper squeegee and squeegee angle can make printing easier and more efficient. The most important thing to consider about the squeegee is the durometer of the rubber material. Squeegee durometer dictates the stiffness of your blade. Higher duro squeegees are stiffer, while lower are softer. When printing, it's important to stay on top of your squeegee blade. Whether you push or you pull, if your blade bends, you will no longer be printing or shearing the ink, you will now be smashing the ink. Notice if I stay on top of the blade without it bending too much, I stay on the sharp edge of the squeegee and it allows to shear the ink while printing. However, as you can see, when I put too much pressure, the blade bends and I now smash the ink. We typically start screen printers with a 70 durometer blade, which is a great medium blade for manual printing. It's great to keep your squeegee strong enough, but also it has to be sharp. If it gets dull over time, it needs to be replaced or sharpened. Squeegee handles typically come in wood or aluminum. I like using these ErgoForce handles because they're easy to flip around and you can use several times, and the squeegee blade essentially lasts 2 times as long. The squeegee handle also holds the blade up, giving a lower durometer more stability and allows you to use less pressure. It's the squeegee angle that actually lays the ink down. When pulling, a higher angle will lay down less ink and a lower angle will lay down more ink. When pushing, it's the exact opposite. A lower angle will lay down less ink, a higher angle will lay down more ink. This typically means your angle is between 10 and 15 degrees off 90, though it may go as low as 25 depending on the type of ink in the garment if you want more coverage. Also, when using thicker inks and lower angles, you need a stronger or higher durometer to help maintain the integrity of the blade. Your squeegee pressure is also very important. Most people struggle by putting not enough pressure, so make sure that you have a good leverage, good height of your press about waist level, and you're able to put a good amount of pressure. This means pushing is also easier than pulling because you got your body weight behind you. Also, if you use too much pressure, your blade will bend and you'll ruin your print. So the right amount of medium pressure is key. Now that we're ready to print, we want to ensure that our job has enough ink to print production. Before adding ink, however, we always want to make sure that we stir or modulate the ink aggressively so it's flowing better. I will load a little bit more ink into the screen so we have enough for production. To flood the screen, we get a nice high angle and a good grip on the squeegee. Lift the screen into the up position and bring the ink up over the image area. You'll need to use some force here, but not too much. Think of spreading peanut butter on bread. Your ink shouldn't flood through the stencil area. It should stay in or on top of the stencil. Now our screen is in the down or print position. You want to make sure your screen is all the way nested in the registration gate and that if you are on a tabletop press, your press is bolted down firmly so you get enough pressure during the printing process. For this print, we're going to do a push print. Remember, you should maintain about a 70 or 20 degree squeegee angle with a good amount of pressure to slowly push the ink onto the garment. The angle and pressure here are important. Use your body to help push your arms and apply a good amount of pressure. You should see the ink shear and transfer down onto the garment and the screen pop up behind it. If the ink is stuck down in the mesh, this means either one of the following. Your angle is too high, your pressure is too light, or your off contact is off. If you're having problems clearing the screen and you can physically see off contact, typically it's your pressure, so try adjusting that first. Really get a good amount of pressure and body leverage to get the screen and the ink passing through the screen, releasing onto the garment, not staying stuck in the screen. If you still can't get it, try adjusting your off contact slightly. If your print lays down smooth, you'll have a nice white underbase to print and stack on top of. Keep in mind when you're printing hit to hit, you always need to push or pull your squeegee in the same direction. If I'm pushing one way and then immediately start pulling the other way, I'm going to blur my image underneath. Our goal here is to mat down the fibers of the shirt, so I'm going to do 2 passes in order to make sure that happens. After I'm doing my second pass, let's take a look at our result and see what we got. Our Wilflex Lava Low Bleed White did a great job in 2 passes of matting these carded cotton fibers down. So now we can stack on a great underbase. A flash dryer is used in the screen printing process to set or gel the ink so we can stack other ink on top of it. Typically your flash dryer is going to sit 2 to 3 inches above your ink and it will flash anywhere between 3 to 10 seconds. Here we're using one of our more popular flash options, our 18 by 18 inch 110 volt Riley flash, which typically takes 5 to 8 seconds. A faster, higher production option is our Hot Rock Quartz flash, which only takes around 3 seconds. Our Riley flash is an infrared flash, which means when you plug it in, it's always on. For this reason, it's important to remember not to keep it over your platen or it could burn your platen. These flashes are great because overall they're built well and will last for years and aren't too expensive. Our Quartz is a higher end option because it uses high wattage bulbs instead of a heating panel, and the bulbs only turn on when they're needed. This saves energy and speeds up the flash time. It is more expensive, but it is the fastest and safest option, and that's why we use it on automated presses as well. Using the Riley flash, I flash for about 5 seconds and then move the platen out from under the flash and fill it. Typically the ink is reaching between 260 and 280 degrees on the surface when properly flashed. What you're really feeling for when this ink is it's sticky but not wet. If you flash the ink too long, the ink's going to be not sticky at all, and you could cure the ink. That's not really good because the ink won't receive the top layer on top of it. If your shirt's going to be under your flash longer during production, it's a good idea to raise your flash dryer up a bit so you don't overcure your ink. Once flashed, it's time for our second layer. Since part of this design is white, we're going to go on 2 underbases and then flash one more time for an overprint. The second print with the low bleed white is a lot easier because we've already done the work by laying down a smooth foundation. This is why having an underbase is super important. For the overprint, you'll notice that I move my squeegee faster. You don't have to worry as much about exact pressure and you can only pass it one time. Now the print looks bright and opaque. Now we flash again, but this time we're going to use our hot rock quartz flash. We simply move it under the platen and the flash triggers the quartz sensor, which fires on the flash for 3 seconds. Now we test the ink and it's good for our overprint. For our lava red overprint, we're going to print this very similar to the second coat. Pretty easy to do. And since we're doing an overprint with a little bit thinner color, we're going to be using our 156 mesh screen. The lava colors are creamy but very opaque, so you can print them direct to fabric, print flash print, which in case you could go back to using a lower mesh for higher ink coverage. The key of a good overprint is not to press too hard, laying the ink on top of the underbase and not smashing it into the underbase. Off contact here is key, which we already had a good off contact set up. With a quick print, we can swipe over the print and check for our results. The print looks great. Let's talk for a second about flashing. Flashing is a great way to gel your ink and stack multiple colors on top of each other. However, it is a crutch and can slow down production. So if you can print wet on wet direct to fabric or wet on different sides of the print, you will go faster. The key is to use flashing to make a better print, but not use it too much. Now let's print our lighter garment. This is our canvas 100% cotton ring spun shirt. Because of the quality of the shirt and the high mesh, high detail of the screen, we're going to be using water-based ink to start out with. Since this is a simple one-color design and going on lighter fabrics, we do not need to flash or to stack the ink. When printing with our Green Galaxy pitch black water base, you notice that I load a generous amount of ink into the screen. Next, I take my squeegee and flood the ink into the print area. Notice that my squeegee floats on top of the ink and does not push the ink through the mesh, as if we were printing. Now with the same 70 or 20 degree angle that we used before and a good amount of pressure, I'm going to do another push to make my print. With water-based inks, I do find it helpful to push twice to allow the ink to flow through the mesh. You do need to be a little careful with water-based, not to print on too low of a mesh, put too much ink through the garment. Good rule of thumb is if you're printing ink through the garment and you see ink on your platen below, you're printing with too low a mesh or you're pushing too hard. When printing with water-based ink, we want to flood the screen between prints. This helps prevent ink from drying in your screen and clogging your mesh. I recommend lifting the screen slightly when flooding to avoid accidentally pushing ink into your garment. The print looks great and the detail came through amazingly. For our water-based print on a darker garment, we're also going to be printing on a ring-spun 100% cotton canvas shirt. We're going to be using Comet White, but instead of using straight Comet White, because we're going through higher mesh, we're going to reduce it down using a little bit of clear core. Clear core is a great product to add into Comet White to make it last longer in the screen and easier to print, but it does reduce its opacity. We could do something very similar if we wanted to print with plastisol using Meteor White and Curable Reducer or Soft Hand Fashion Base. Typically when you reduce ink, reduce 5 to 10%. Here we're going to reduce about 10% straight into the bucket. You can see how much thicker the original ink is than the reduced ink. For this print we're doing 2 push passes just like the water-based print on a light garment. The print comes out looking great, it's white, but distressed looking on a dark garment.